In an age where everything is streaming, it's been said that physical media is dead, and yet a growing number of young people are not only enjoying, but embracing VHS, DVDs, vinyl, and surprisingly, cassettes. Yes, the humble cassette tape, which was how many Gen Xers took their music on the go, has now begun to see a bit of a resurgence, thanks to people who weren't even born during their heyday.
What is going on, good people? I was reading an article the other day, and it was talking about how there's a growing number of Gen Z and millennial folks that are beginning to favor physical media, which is a little counterintuitive given the streaming, everything, internet era in which they came of age. But if there's one thing that I can give a lot of the younger folks credit for, and I know I give them a lot of crap, but I think they became jaded and cynical at a much earlier age than we did, because they had the entire world's worth of information at their fingertips. And to a degree, when we were their age, we were shielded from a lot of that, so we still had, some of the downsides of the world to discover. Plus, they grew up in an entirely different type of economic circumstances than we did, and it just kind of has made them some salty little bastards, But there's a growing number that's beginning to crave something real, something that they can put their hands on, something tangible. And I definitely see this within the sphere of video game collecting, but there's a growing number that I'm running into that are collecting VHS tapes and LPs and CDs. And to that end, I was speaking with one, probably about 2 or 3 weeks back, and she couldn't have been any more than about 18, 19 years old, but I was buying a handful of cassette tapes, and she looks at them, and she looks up at me, and she's like, I really need to get a cassette player, that's words I never thought I would hear out of the mouth of somebody that young. And I think that's what kind of started me down the road on digging into this a little bit. I'm like, well, is this a thing? And it turns out that it is. And folks, apparently cassette tapes are making a comeback. Now, vinyl has been a thing for a while. It's become its own little cottage industry. And of late, the last few years, you started to see a little bit of a resurgence in CDs, but now all of a sudden cassette tapes are on the radar, and which is really, really interesting. That was something I thought would never reappear in the zeitgeist ever again, but it has. And the reason for this being, it's driven a lot by, I don't want to say hipsters, but yeah, call a spade a spade. But you have a lot of the younger up-and-coming bands and musicians who they want to merchandise themselves, and they want to market themselves, and it's quite pricey to have vinyl LPs pressed. And burning CDs, it can be somewhat time-consuming, and really, who has the equipment for it anymore? Other than like the single tower CD DVD burner that we had around the early 2000s. But one thing that's still really cheap and easy to duplicate on is cassette tapes. So you're having this trickle up to a certain extent, even with some of your bigger stars. If you go on the internet, you look at some of your favorite performers, and I don't know that Taylor Swift's one of them, but she probably is, that I've seen, like Lady Gaga and Madonna and some rock bands releasing new release albums on the cassette form in maybe small limited batches. And it really does my heart a lot of good to see this. And my own little boy, he has a tape player in his room now because he saw me messing with mine one day. He's like, Daddy, what's that? I said, well, it's a cassette playing boombox. And what's that? I said, well, this is what Daddy used to listen to music on back in the day. And I pulled out a tape and I put it in and started it up, and his eyes lit up. He was absolutely enamored of it. So I dug out another cassette boombox I had laying around. I said, you want this, buddy? He's like, yeah, I want it. And then he's been coming back in my office, and he's been grabbing little tapes here and there and playing them. And it just, watching him fall in love with it is, I don't know, it warms my Gen X heart, especially being his father and all. But yeah, cassette tapes, back in the day, we used to make mixtapes for people. We would record songs off the radio because, again, internet didn't have streaming anything. And back in the day, if you wanted just one song, a lot of times you would record it off the radio if you happened to be listening at the right time. And then invariably what would happen is if you were recording off the radio, you'd have some dill hole DJ, like 10 seconds into the song or 10 seconds before the beginning, he would start talking over it, and we'd be like, no. But, so we would just learn to live with having tracks with a little added content on them, Cassettes are just a fun and fantastic way of carrying around your media and experiencing your media. Now, they don't have the same sound that LPs or CDs do, but I can tell you that growing up for me, it was basically cassettes or nothing. But I'm actually starting to see more and more people carrying around cassette playing, like Walkman type devices. I think Walmart, their electronic company ONN, I think that they manufacture some cassette players now, and it's really neat watching it to come back. So to that end, I've been collecting cassette tapes for a while, and I was at Goodwill, the bins, the other day, and I found a little box carrying them in, which oddly enough looks like a boom box, and I walked out with a bunch of tapes and one Beatles anthology on CD. $6, including the case. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I guess maybe somebody was clearing out one of their older brothers or uncles' old rusted out iRock and found a bunch of cassettes, because in this, and again, this is for $6, picked up a Van Halen album. Which one is this? This is 5150. I'm not a big Van Halen fan, but come on, I'm getting this for pennies, right? Picked up Duran Duran, this band called The Final Frontier. Apparently they were an 80s band. I'm not familiar with them. We'll be checking them out. And since I'm getting back into using my tape player more and more, I found a head cleaner, demagnetizer. What else I picked? Y'all, one of the greatest albums of all time, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, on cassette. Then that doesn't have a tape in it. Whitesnake, Madonna, True Blue, which has my all-time favorite track of hers, La Isla Bonita, on it. Not one of her more, I think, when you ask people what their favorite Madonna tracks is, almost nobody's going to say that, but it happens to be mine. I found one with a band called Trick or Treat. Just a bunch of great, and Barry White. Who doesn't love Barry White? Not exactly metal, but I picked up Billy Ocean, the album that has Caribbean Queen on it. Now bear in mind, I got all this. $6. I have to say that again. Tesla, Mechanical Resonance, Men at Work. And there's literally 10, 15 tapes in there. And I feel like if you're going to begin collecting cassette tapes and CDs, I think now is the time to get in on it, because it is still an affordable pursuit. And another thing that I loved about cassettes back in the day was most, not all, but most would include lyric sheets folded up inside the covers, inside the case art. And that's, again, before we had the internet, so we couldn't just hop on Google, hey, what are the words to that song? We either had the lyrics in the case art or we just walked around singing them wrong, and that's just how it was. But yeah, you can still, CDs and cassettes are still able to be cheaply had. I think CDs have been, depending on the album, have been seeing a certain creep up in price in the last year or two. But I would definitely recommend hopping in now, just unlocking some old memories. And honestly, they look great on a shelf too. Because let's face it, like CDs, cassettes, vinyl, they had some of the best cover art back in the day. They're works of art in and of themselves on top of the music. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. I'm excited to see cassette tapes making a comeback. I hope they do. I'd like to see more and more new albums released. Some of my favorite artists, like Hailstorm, would definitely love to own some cassette tapes from them. And I'm just looking forward to see if it goes in the future like vinyl has, to where it becomes this really kind of... I'm not collecting because of the value of it, but if there happens to be some valuable albums that I'm able to pick up for dirt, hey, all the more, just all the better, just makes them even more desirable for me. Anyway, what are your memories of cassette tapes? Have you noticed like a little bit of an uptick lately in people messing with them, collecting them, playing them? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, if you were even remotely entertained by my incessant and meandering rambling, then go ahead and click that like button, click the subscribe button. I'm at 250 right now. I'd like to double that by the end of the year, and you can make that happen. Anyway, as always, y'all, pick your battles, because not every hill is worth dying on, and I will catch you on the next one.
You know what? You're lucky you're cute, you little dick.